Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Let me know.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Today, we'll start with our next module or the last module, network security. Almost everyone whosoever uses network is some way or the other affected or impacted or at least concerned about security. So we'll look at what are the security threats, challenges, issues are, and what solutions have been implemented to partly address it. So today's lecture is mostly talk about some threats, mostly on DNS. So good URL gives you some details about the DNS attacks you knew. And for this module, your textbook is different. It is not Kuros and Ross. Chapter 10 is not so great about as far as topic is concerned, is very, very perfunctory. So I'll try to give you a little more information so that you can understand. That being a course book, there are few copies available in library, you can look at those. So let's start. The book is Computer and Communication Network by Nader F. Mir. This is as per the syllabus prescribed, so please go through that. So why do we need network security? Anyone like to answer why network security, why it's so important, and why should we be concerned about it? Or nobody
Data
can.
security.
Yeah, so what could happen? Why we need to put in security?
There is a confidential data.
The confidential data, you are afraid of somebody might steal it,
Yes, sir.
but data still belongs to you. You might look at it, does it matter? Let's say you're wearing a golden ring and anybody can look at it. There's no confidentiality in it that wearing a golden ring. Does that mean that fellow is taking a golden ring away? So why confidentiality is so much important? Give a generic thought, don't have to be quiet.
They might misuse the data.
In what way? Can you give an example?
Like something about the bank details. If at all that data is
Yeah, so
leaked.
yeah, so
Uh,
somebody, if can you're saying somebody can steal your, let's say, username, password, and then they might withdraw money and give you what is called pecuniary damage or financial damage. That's
yes,
a good point. Absolutely. Anything else? Let's say somebody doesn't steal data, but somebody knows that you have a 1 crore rupee in your bank. Is it a dangerous information? I mean, you have a 1 crore rupee in the bank. Do you want to share with everybody, or do you don't want to share? It depends on the perspective. If you are afraid living in a place where nobody has money and think the moment people come to know that you have money, they'll try to kidnap you or they'll try to kill you or force you or loan them or whatever. So sometimes even availability of information could be a risk. So essentially, if you don't secure your data, and secure could mean anything, it could be stealing your data. That means you don't have access, they're taken it away. or maybe just getting to know about it, and that could be a trouble there. So as far book is concerned, there's a two categories. One is called cryptographic techniques, so two techniques to secure the data. And other is basically authentication techniques. So how do we secure, what can happen? And in reality, can the security be foolproof? Let's say when you put a lock on your door, your house, are you sure that lock cannot be broken?
No.
No. Then why do you put a lock? If you know that lock can be broken, then why do you put a lock? Guys, open thought, give something. If you all know that lock can be broken, then why do we put a lock? Aruna,
So,
Ranjita, yeah, go ahead.
so for our purpose, we'll just.
But just if you know that anybody can break a lock, then what is the point in spending your time? Just a mental satisfaction?
But it will take some time now, sir.
How much time? Somebody brings in a hammer, it takes 30 seconds and the lock is broken. Then what do you put? So time is not the issue. Issue is if you don't put a lock, it is an open access, somebody can enter and nobody would notice. Now the fact that he has broken the lock, there's an offense, is noticed. And once you complain, the cost for that person could be way too high. Why did you break the lock? You might be able to put a police complaint, put a case, you can identify. If somebody breaking a lock, the cost of that breaking could be way too high. And it may not be worth it for a normal thief or something. Hence, the lock gives you some kind of safety security. Lock doesn't give you absolute security. Somebody can still break it, but it probably gives you 99.99% security that a normal any passerby would not come and break and take the things away. It gives you some security, a reasonable security, even though it doesn't give you full security. So can security
Okay.
be foolproof? Answer is no. Why do we still put it? Because we're trying to increase the cost. So in my view, you are secure as long as following things are satisfied. The cost of breaking the security is more than the cost of getting the item. Let's say you have in your house a gold coin sitting worth, let's say, 1 lakh rupees, and somebody has to take the coin away, break into the room. If cost of breaking the room or breaking the door and getting caught and punished and whatever is more than 1 lakh rupees, then nobody is going to break your room because they know cost is more, there is no point breaking. Other is tardiness. If the value of the item you are using has lost its value after a time. You have exam going and tomorrow is the exam. So if I take a question paper, keep in my office, I need to put a lock because I do not want anybody to come and see. But after the exam is over, the question paper value has, security has no meaning because already open in the out. So it lost its timeliness. So as long as it has a timely value, as long as cost of breaking it is more than the cost of the item, then you put security. So essentially all you're doing is when you put in security, you are increasing the cost for the hacker. And because the cost for the hacker is a lot more than the value of the information item, you can assume you are safe and secure. But in theory, everything can be broken. Now, when deal with security, you'll probably come to use three terms. One is called confidentiality, integrity, and authentication. People call CIA, but that's a different. We are not talking to CIA as U.S. Central Intelligence Agency. We are talking about confidentiality, integrity, and authentication. Anyone like to answer? Chandan, what do you mean by, can you, in your own thought process, confidentiality, integrity, and authentication? With some example. No? Ranjita,
Yes, sir.
what do you mean
What
by
do you mean by
confidentiality,
confidentiality,
integrity?
integrity?
So confidentiality means it refers to protecting the information being accessed by an unauthorized person.
Okay.
Okay.
Integrity and other donors, sir.
Anybody else? Deva Dixit, others? Nandini, Avinash?
Sir,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Confidentiality and integrity. So not integrity and authentication. So confidentiality is, as Nita said, no unauthorized person should be able to access the information. So you should be able to preserve the information, and unless people have authorization access, they shouldn't be able to access the information. Get to know what is there. That is confidentiality. What is integrity and authentication? Yeah, Avinash. These are common terms.
Yes, sir.
You should be able to
Yes,
explain.
sir. The authentication means uh, when we say provide our password, then it authenticate means it check our data, whatever we put to the stored data, sir.
Your password is a mechanism for authenticating. Yes. But what is authentication?
Identifying a person.
Yeah, identifying a person or verifying a person who says who it is. And it can be both. When you go to, let's say, ICICI Bank ATM, you want to make sure that it is ATM is owned by ICICI and not by some Tom, Dick, and Harry or somebody else, and vice versa. So that is authentication. Verifying or identifying the person, verifying would be better word, who he or she says he is, you verify that. What is integrity?
User cannot change the data.
The user can change the data or somebody else cannot change the data.
Somebody cannot change the
Yeah.
data.
Any unauthorized person should not be able to change the data. And if data has been modified other than the sender or the person who generated, receiver should be able to figure out that the information has been changed. Now, can you give an example? Can you give an example,
So
Karthik? Yeah, the integrity.
while logging sir, Facebook or what, Instagram or email ID sir.
Mm-hmm. I didn't get you. So, what is the integrity here?
So means unauthorized person cannot access because the user ID or
You are
password.
talking confidentiality. I'm talking integrity example.
Okay.
Now, if I were to take your iCard, remove your photo and put in my photo, and security cannot figure out that the photo has been tampered with, what would you call it? Confidentiality violation, integrity violation, or authentication violation?
Integrity violation.
Integrity violation, because you're modifying the information. Now, let's say I carry you have your own iCard, it is your own photograph, but your photograph is very old, or you have grown beard and long hair and something, and security guard says, no, 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 this photo doesn't belong to you. What would you categorize this as? Does it belong to integrity? Does it belong to authentication or confidentiality?
Confidentiality.
No.
Authentication, sir.
Authentication. See, information is there. Only thing is you have grown something, you are not able to prove that it is you, your own iCard. So authentication is failing. Confidentiality is you are trying to keep something which other person shouldn't be able to figure out. Like I'm sending a question paper through attendant to the office, and in between somebody else sees the paper and gets to know. That is confidentiality violation. So three different things you should be clear about what they mean, and we'll look at. So this example you can look at on the figure on the left side. User one says I am user one. There is an intruder there who detect that, capture this, send the message, hi, I am user one. And user two get that. Now in this case, which one are you violating? Confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. When user two get this message, instead of I am user one, user two get the message, hi, I am user one. Which one of three are getting violated?
Integrity, sir.
Confidential.
Why? Can you explain why integrity? I mean, I want you to think about, discuss, then only become clearer.
Because
User
user one is
yeah.
send,
Yeah.
user one is sending a message. I am user one, but there's
Uh,
an intruder who's trying to change the data.
yeah, the data has been changed. He added high. Because data is modified, this is integrity. Now, somebody said confidentiality. Can you explain why confidentiality? Yeah, somebody is saying there's confidentiality violation. Okay, let me put. All three are getting violated. Now, can you tell me why confidentiality is getting violated here?
Sir, because intruder see the message in between user one and user two, sir.
Yeah, because the intruder can see the message, he knows what the message content is, he is not supposed to see, hence confidentiality is violated. Now, why authentication is failing?
Because the user two cannot recognize who user one is, so
Because user 2 cannot recognize whether message is coming from user 1 or message is coming from intruder. User 2 cannot verify. So all three are getting violated. So one way normally think is if user 1 were to encrypt a message and send it out, intruder does not have the key, so can't make out what the message is. And because it can't change it, it doesn't have the key. So even if sent to user 2 will not be able to decipher change messages. So it knows that message is from user 1. So all three get work out. Very simple case, we look at how things really work. So we'll look at, or you can look at the example. This is from your textbook one. Alice wants to talk to Bob, and there is an intruder there called Trudy. And Alice wants to make sure that whatever I'm sending is secured, goes to Bob, and they should be able to communicate without somebody intercepting, deleting, modifying, playing havoc, or whatever it is. Now in daily life, you can say web browser server could be Bob and Alice, the two sides. You are using a browser to communicate securely. Somebody should not be able to interfere, change the data. We already said online banking. If somebody can steal username, password, and so on, DNS servers. We look at different scenario, the routers, which is send traffic in between, and number of other examples. Now the word is whole out there, consisting of bad guys or good guys, depending on how you want to look at it. Bad guy is the one who is trying to steal information or play with it and causing damage to you. A person can do eavesdrop, can silently hear, figure out what you are communicating without your knowledge. When A is sending a message to B, somehow C hears silently what message has been sent. That is called eavesdropping. Neither A knows nor B knows. When you look at the phone tapping that governments keep on doing, that is called eavesdropping. Sometimes you insert messages deliberately. The user one is sending two messages, but intruder inserts a message in between. And that could be a problem there. Impersonation. When I take attendance in the class and some people do a proxy, would you call it impersonation? You guys give me yes or no answer. When a teacher is taking attendance and somebody does a proxy, does it qualify for impersonation?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that is impersonation. You are basically fooling the recipient who the sender is or something of that kind. Hijacking. And how many of you heard the term called ransomware? Anyone heard the term ransomware?
Yes, it was some kind of virus.
No, ransomware is not virus. Anybody else? In fact, in security world, ransomware is one of the biggest threat and least looked into. And that is where the maximum money is. And if you look at the newspaper, you'll find every 2-3 months, you'll find some incident of ransomware.
Sir, it's when they steal confidential data and threaten to release it outside, sir.
That is not really ransomware. That is stealing data and you're trying to negotiate. So you've done confidentiality violation and now you want to negotiate. Ransomware is something else. Let's say you're Dhananjay, right? I kidnap you. and tell your parents, give me 1 crore rupees, otherwise I won't release Dhananjay. Have I
Sir,
stolen something?
sir, it is similar, sir. Like when we buy a software or something, and if the software is infected and uh, the hackers put in some software which is malicious and it computer stops working. And sir, a incident like that happened a few years ago where people started getting messages that until you pay, your system won't work again. And if there's
Yeah,
confidential data, you
yeah,
have
yeah,
to pay.
yeah, right. So basically, somebody takes control over your system. The person does not harm your system. Like when I kidnap one of you and ask your parent to give me high sum of money, I'm not harming you. In fact, I'll take better care of you than anybody else. But I want to make my money by releasing you. So through some means, I take care of your control. Let's say the exam time. And principal has to release the question paper. And I have hijacked or put a ransomware on his laptop. I'm saying, look, unless you pay me 1 lakh rupee, you cannot have access to the laptop. Now time is running out and he doesn't have a choice, otherwise paper has to be cancelled. So he ends up paying me money. That is called ransomware. And that is basically belongs to category of what we call hijacking. You hijack somebody's system, take over, and then try to get appropriate cost, something of that kind. Denial of service is another kind of attack which is not related to stealing, but more related to denying a user a legitimate use of service. An example I could give you is, let's say I'm trying to get admission to KSIT, I didn't get it due to whatever reason, and then I want to make sure that nobody goes to college. I do something, I close the gate, put in a lock, do a dharna, get my folks, block the road, choke the road, blast something, so people can't come to the college. So that is, I'm denying other people to use college as a service. So when I deny somebody to use a service, that belongs to what is called denial of service. So we'll look at what different category threats are, how do they work, and that's where I'll giving a general overview and I'll come about what the syllabus or book says. So they look at 4 kind of threats categories. 3 are pertain to called infrastructure, and 4th one is to end-to-end systems. Like DNS hacking, routing table poisoning, packet mistreatment, and denial of service. Let's look at DNS hacking. How does DNS work? When you type google.com in the browser, your machine sends a DNS query to DNS server, DNS server responds, and then the browser makes connectivity to IP address to that machine, and then you get the information and things work. And that's how the DNS is. So why it is important to hijack or hack the DNS? What harm could come by hacking a DNS server? And guys, try to be open. You could think about the generic discussion we are doing. Niharika, Dhruv,
Yes, sir.
yeah. Why hacking a DNS is a problem? What kind of problem it gives you? Faria, in fact, today when people try to attack some machine, the first target is DNS server. Because my DNS is down, that means I won't be able to get the IP address. If I can't get the IP address, I won't be able to access whole internet is down. And that could be real big damage. And today the whole economy based on internet, it could be real challenge. So we look at 4 kind of attacks. As per the book is given, there are a lot more, but a limit to the 4 as per the book. Others you can read out. I given a URL. Information level attack, masquerading attack, information leakage attack, and domain hijacking attack. Let's look at each one of them. Information level attack. When you in your, let's say, college or home, when you access yahoo.com, your laptop makes a query to local DNS server. And local DNS server would contact the main authoritative server. And once the local DNS server has cached, it is going to reuse it. It could be Airtel, it could be BSNL, it could be Idea, Geo, whatever. Look at. Now, if I am able to trick local DNS server with wrong information, then local DNS server would keep its cache is poisoned. So you're trying to say go to caseid.edu.in, but I give you different IP address and you come to a different website. And on that website, I make a same look and feel, and then you won't even notice. And this is basically the what is called information attack. So you poison the cache of local DNS server, and if people resolve, you go to different place, and that could be an issue there. Other is masquerading attack. Somehow I make changes in the network that whenever you do query, rather than query going to actual DNS server, it comes to DNS server put in by attacker. So if I'm able to say everybody, look, all your DNS packets should come to me, my machine, rather than going to the actual DNS server of college, then I become man in the middle. And once request comes to me, it's up to me what answer I would like to give. And that way I could create all the other information. Further, I connect, get the information, look at it from the main DNS server, attacking as their backup server, and steal all that part. Or I may even not allow people to go out, this kind of things. Or because I'm man in the middle, rather than sending a packet to icicbank.com, I'll send it to some other bank. And that could be a problem there as well. Information leakage is I'm trying to figure out what is our, let's say we have some public IP addresses, we got 8 public IP addresses, and 6 are being used. I query all the hosts, all the public IP, figure out which machines are alive, what the respective host names are, and out of it, if I find 2 are not being assigned, then I'll put a changes in my DNS server, create some good looking domain name with those IP addresses which are not being alive. So let's say I figure out that there is no domain name called exam.caseid.edu.in, or you find there is no domain called aiml.caseid.edu.in. So I create a domain name, put in the different IP address, and somebody queries, you probably get IP address corresponding to new IP address which is not even there. And that belongs to what is called information leakage attack. Third is domain hijacking. I basically hijack the DNS server. See, anytime you update DNS entry, you always use some tools. Now, using those tools, if I know that tools are vulnerable, I know their weak point, and I manipulate those tools. And when you make a registration, rather than going to making GoDaddy as a registrar, I make somebody else as the registrar. And I become your authoritative domain name server. And once I become authoritative domain name server, I can give any other IP address, and when request comes, I could give you same look and feel, and you won't know. And that could be a problem, and that is where DNS hacking attack really works. So DNS could be a very, very powerful tool for an attacker to attack, or very important value target. So in fact, first thing attackers do is they want to bring down a service, they attack a DNS server because when DNS is down, then internet is practically down. I would suggest you to read other attacks as well. For example, DDoS attack on DNS. I sent so many packets to DNS server that it keep responding to me and it got overloaded and is not able to resolve genuine DNS query. So in a way, and that is what typically the attackers do. They flood DNS server with DDoS attack. If this server becomes too busy and is not able to respond to genuine requests, and for end users, internet seems to practically down. Or I will query for certain subdomains which doesn't exist. Now DNS being a recursive doesn't have it, it's trying to find from other servers and that way it keeps making recursive queries and there will be certain timeout. So if I make too many queries, it will be waiting for too many responses and times out and become too slow and not respond. And that could be other attacks. I would request to look at those. Next category as given by the book syllabus is router poisoning attack. That basically means I do somehow manipulate and change the routing table entries. And once I change the routing table entries, that means packet could be misdirectly routed to some other place and not into the right place. So once you have a wrong entries, a packet could loop. I mean, let's say a packet has to go A to B, B to C, and to further, I could say I can change the routing entry of C instead of going to D. It goes back to E, and E goes back to B, and remains in a loop and get discarded. Or I will, let's say I'm unhappy with case IT, so somehow play the routing table entries, different routers, and every packet for every college I send it to case IT. Server becomes sees so many traffic, it can't serve and practically goes down. Or even called network congestion and other issues. Because I am modifying my routing table entries, I can logically partition network into two parts and two parts can't talk to each other. And that could be another bad case when we're doing with routing table entries. How do you do this kind of routing table poisoning? There are two kinds of attack. One is called link attack, other is called router attack. In the link attack, you somehow get access to the link. And now you, because access to the link, let's say you see a Ethernet wire is going, a long Ethernet wire, you somehow put yourself in the middle, break into two, put the end connector, connect it, and now every packet goes via you, and now you can insert, inject, do whatever you like to do. So hacker got access to the link, and because hacker has got the access, is either can interrupt the traffic, doesn't even let the routing packet go, or even modifies the routing messages, and as a result, the packets could be, routing table could be badly configured. The attacks works for both link state routing as well as distance vector routing. Why this attack works? Because when we studied this distance vector routing protocol, nowhere we said that when router B gets a link state message or DV message from router A, how does router B trust this message? We just looked at the message and trusted it, and that could be the problem. So unless you bring in some kind of authentication and integrity in the message, you don't have to process it, and that is where it could happen there. And now because I had done routing table changes, I can say any packet to this machine could go down. I don't want people to write exam to VTU, so I say anybody accessing VTU website, simply drop the packet. You'll never get a response. Or I can readdress to somewhere else, and that could be a problem again there. And as a result, packets are getting dropped, or I limit the rate, throughput become very low. In the router attack, rather than accessing a link, I somehow get unauthorized access to a router. And when I get access to the router, because the password could be simple or not protected well, or the somehow got access, or I look at the router who doesn't really validate updates, I send in some message which is going to simply accept and update the entries, then as well as getting an access. So identify the routers who somehow don't validate the sender, and then using that I corrupt the routing table entries. I can create a fictitious link, a loopback link, and say all the packets should go there, and packet will basically be discarded. Or a working link, I can disable it, so connectivity goes down. And when that happens, when the routing table entries are wrong, a link has gone down, your throughput get impacted, and you'll not be able to use internet or whatever, or it may be other things. Or because my routing table is become bad, because I'm sending my DB message or my link state message or distance vector message to other routers, even their routing table could be corrupted. And that could be a real challenge. Once every router has got corrupted routing table, you are controlling the network for wrong information. So that is how the routing attacks really work. All you have to make sure is that any router who gets routing update, it needs to authenticate the messages being received. Third kind of infrastructure attack is packet mistreatment. That basically means somehow I get the packet being transmitted, but either a switch, or let's say I put in a switch in between, capture every packet and see what could be done. And then I modify the packet or change the packet or do something. And this kind of attack is difficult. And again, you get into the router attack or link attack. And because router could be known that if a router gets a packet for unknown destination, it may drop. So you must think the router is genuinely working, where it is not working because I have created the wrong trouble, I mistreated the packets, made the changing entry, modify the router packets, and that creates the trouble there. And other kind of things, router is sending a packet forwarding, I capture it and change the destination, go somewhere else, and again the problem happens with the same. The only way to do that is to make sure that your packets are need to be authenticated and they are accompanied with digital signatures, like we have seen in the OSPF. The OSPF routing update packets you typically use using called MD5 sum, using a secret key, so that when you get a packet, you know whether the message is corrupted or not. And if message is corrupted, it's not passing through your checksums, you simply ignore and discard the message, and even detect that there's a router which is creating a trouble there. So digital signature does play that kind of scenario. Sometimes you might even replicate the packet. Let's say I've seen that TCP connection happening between a client and a server. I noted all these SYNs in packets. I wait for the connection to be over. And once connection to be over, I myself play those same packets for the first connection. The server will think the new connection, get established, and then I don't do anything. So server resources would be used and things will go for a toss. That also could happen. So in replication, even though I'm not changing the information, but I could expect router to misbehave, and that could cause trouble there. And the way to detect replication is each packet should have its own sequence number. So receiver sees the duplicate sequence number, it knows it's a duplicate packet. Other kind of attack is called ping of death attack. Basically meaning you send a large ICMP packet as number of fragments. So send number of fragments, and a receiving router would try to deassemble the fragment, but you never send the full fragment. Or you try to give a fragment size such as it exceeds router buffer, and buffer becomes so much it gets out of memory and crashes. So these are called packet mistreatment attacks and create trouble there. The last kind of attack, which is called end-to-end, is denial of service. That basically meaning you are doing something so that legitimate users are not able to use the right service. Let's say there's a web server and I send too many requests to the web server becomes busy and can't respond to genuine requests, so we would say it is under the DOS attack or denial of service attack. Or even traffic could be lower, and that could be a problem there. So it's not really information theft or a loss. It is prevention of a service to a legitimate user, and that has to be different understood. So previous three attacks were more of an infrastructure, and this attack is more of the basically preventing is not an information leakage attack, it is not an information stealing, but it is preventing the access, and that's the main challenge that happens. So I can attack a DNS server, I can attack an email server, I can attack a web server, I can send number of packets to the web server and give me too many requests, and web server gets overloaded, and the genuine user comes in, it can't even serve, and that could be the problem we need to look at. Other kind of DOS attack is something called UDP charge on service. It basically means you send 1 byte of data to UDP server, I think port number 19, it will send you a random packet with size of 1 to 500. So my 1 byte of data packet could result in up to 500 bytes of response, and I will change my source address. So I'll start with a number of such packets and changing my source address to somebody else. The UDP server will send large number of packets to the other server, not me, and the server keep processing it and will simply get choked, and that is called denial of service attack. Other could be TCP SYN flooding. See, when I send a TCP SYN message, I receive a SYN ACK, and server is in the state called SYN received, waiting for the ACK. And if I never get the ACK, server would remain in the SYN receive state for about a minute before discarding. So, yeah. So if, let's say to web server, I send TCP SYN packet with spoofed IP address, server would send a SYN ACK to other machine, which is not even there. That packet would be discarded, but web server would be retrieving SYN receive state, and if I send too many packets, I consume all the resources of web server, and that would result in web server not serving a request to genuine users. Or even ICMP flooding, send too many packets, server gets flooded there. Other form is called distributed DOS attacks. So rather than sending a packet from one machine, I somehow compromise number of machines on the internet and use those machines to send a packet. And now because packet is coming in number of different machines, not from me, so network authority can't even figure out from where this attack is coming up. And such kind of attack is very difficult. In fact, one of the major concerns the internet authority has, the most of the banks, the DDoS attack. Because if attack is coming from all different places, let's say I compromise different servers, and suddenly at 10 a.m. I attack the VTV website, that when exam can be conducted and whole thing goes down. And they're difficult to attack. So one has to deal with how to prevent, understand, poke the link. So we have done basic category of attack types. And tomorrow we'll get into cryptography techniques, tomorrow meaning next lecture. What we can do to ensure that confidentiality of message is maintained, and the different kind of cryptography called symmetric key cryptography or public and private key cryptography. We'll look at that. So let's summarize what we studied today. We started with kind of 4 categories of attacks: DNS hacking, router poisoning, packet mistreatment, and our DDoS attack. And of course, we look at 3 key attributes related to security, confidentiality, integrity, and authentication, and understand 3 are different things. At one point, one could be violated, while other 2 could be preserved. Have understand those. And so read something about cryptography, understand, and next lecture we look at cryptography. Thank you. If any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we can drop.